Well, hello. Happy Tuesday. Is it Tuesday? Yeah, Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, and welcome to the live 4 and 3 podcast taping. We're going to be kicking up a taping here in just a moment. So the taping is actually, so when you listen to the podcast on the like iTunes or whatever, you're not going to hear any of this. This is just, we're getting ready to tape. We're showing you the taping because
it's bonus
cool
content.
Like it's just bonus content because we know you are just itching
You're
to
dying
find
to
out
know
what Trey and Dan are thinking right before we tape.
Yes.
So, and actually Sarah, our, social media genius behind the scenes here at CBN and Faithwire, she just brought up something here, Trey, and this is just controversial topic. People can weigh in on the chat. So I live on like a loop. It's just a little circle. So closed loop. Only people live on here really drive through. And then it goes into a neighborhood. So people walk their dogs back here all the time. And there's plenty of little neighborhoods around here to walk. There's a lot of different roads right around here. And my dog, she barks at all the dogs that come by. It's annoying, but what am I going to do? She's a golden retriever. She wants to play with all the dogs, right? And she's barking at all them. And then so this guy, we know the dog, Harper, he walks the dog by all the time and she wants to play. He runs now. So he comes by my loop and he's not a runner, but I see him coming and then he runs by my house, like for a good 100 yards or so until he's like from a couple yards before, a couple yards after. I'm just wondering, why does he keep coming down the street? Like, it's just, there's plenty of other spots to walk. Like, well, if you've got to sprint around, like, why do it? And then Sarah said that he has the right to go for a walk without being barked at by a dog. If that's the case, I'm going to jail then for whatever the crime is for my dog barking at people, because she barks at a lot of the dogs that come by when she sees them. So I think, what's the etiquette there?
The listeners here know that I would certainly already have been arrested with Piper. Piper likes to bark. I mean, at humans, birds, other dogs, the wind. I mean, literally, there is not a thing that Piper doesn't like to. It's so odd because she's relatively nobody will believe me on this podcast. She's a relatively quiet dog, but when we tape the podcast, it
always makes an appearance. Yeah.
I know that he wants me to be quiet, so I'm just not going. I'm
not going to do it. So keep an ear out for Piper or Little Ann, which is my dog, and she's up there asleep though. I don't know what she's not awake right now, so I don't think she's going to see any of the dogs.
So my dog is, people haven't necessarily seen our dogs, but my dog is about 10 pounds. She's a toy Aussie. Yours is a golden retriever. And you call your dog Little Ann, and I just call my dog Piper, and I think the names really should be reversed.
Yeah, we should switch. Ours is kind of ironical
maybe it's just
now.
ironic.
Yes, ours is ironic, like Little John from, Robin Hood. He's the big guy, Little John. But Little Ann. It's from the book Where the Red Fern Grows. That's the kids had just read that book when we got the puppy. So I think there's Old Dan and Little Ann, I think, are the two dogs in that book. Great book.
Gotcha.
Anyway, there goes Piper. So now it's about time to start up.
Yeah. All
right, Piper, pipe down so we can tape. All right. Well, if anyone heard that and they listened to that, I want to hear what the etiquette is. Like, what am I supposed to? I try to get the dog to stop barking, but I can't not make her bark at a dog that walks by. I mean, we stopped. Right. There's another house that had another golden retriever, and that dog just went crazy at our dog every time. We just stopped going that way. I just go a different way. It's not like there's no places to walk. Like, just if there's a house that's barking at you, just don't go around that one. Or you could run.
The world and the neighborhood is your oyster. Why run when you can walk somewhere else? That's my rule of life for everything. Why run when I can walk somewhere else?
That is a good rule of thumb. Good rules to live by Trey Goins-Phillips. I like that one. That's good. All right, let's fire up this tape, and here we go. Press and record, so I don't forget to do that. Oh my gosh, she's not going to stop. What is she barking at?
I don't know. I even closed my curtain today, thinking that maybe that would get her to stop. But
all right. Well, when I'm going and you're not going, you can hit mute. But if she's barking, just roll with it. Just go. So all right, here we go. Here we go. Stand by.
Faithwire.com.
Hello and welcome to 4 and 3, a podcast breaking down 4 of the most important stories of the day and 3 things you need to know about them, all from a Christian perspective. Today is Tuesday, June 8th, 2021. I'm Dan Andros. Coming up on the podcast today, Burger King takes a swipe at Chick-fil-A over their LGBT stance. And a judge has told a Canadian pastor that was jailed for preaching that his religious freedoms were not violated. Interesting ruling there. Plus, a big-time pastor is stepping down. We'll have the details there. And Washington State is offering marijuana to adults who get vaccinated, the latest push to try to get people to take the vaccine. So we will have those stories and more with Trey Goins-Phillips from Faithwire.com. Trey, how's it going today?
Good. I mean, just, me and a loud dog, the other co-host of the show.
All right. Well, hopefully
she's quiet at the moment. Knock on wood.
Okay, good. Just before taping here, Piper was piping up, so we'll see. We'll be on pins and needles that she doesn't go into a barking fit in the middle of the podcast here.
Right. So the stories today to me are just like crazy, right? Like,
yeah, I'm morally convicted that I've even brought up the Burger King one for a number of reasons. One, I typically, it's like Coke versus Pepsi, Burger King, McDonald's.
Yeah.
I always go to McDonald's. That's just me. And obviously Chick-fil-A over that. And so we've got that interesting, then there's Piper there. She's not quiet now.
Yeah.
But that is a battle going back and forth right now. So I was a little conflicted on even bothering to bring it up and give Burger King the attention, but decided to go with it because it's just irritating.
I tend to agree with you. So Chick-fil-A is always, of course, at the top of the list.
Right,
but,
of course.
Next would definitely be, as unhealthy as it is, anybody who says they don't like McDonald's, I think they are lying or they've convinced themselves of an untruth because it just is, it is objectively good. I mean, I know that it's plastic. I'm putting plastic into my body.
We know this. No one's going there to be healthy. Right. Like you're not going there to go, you know what, I'm really trying to, lose a few pounds here or, lower my cholesterol. That's not what you're going to McDonald's. You're going to get a delicious sandwich. And you're right. Exactly. I mean, some things are self-evident. And the fact that the Big Mac is one of the greatest sandwiches of all time is just tough to deny. So,
exactly.
All right, well, let's dive right in here with that story. Story number 1. And shots have been fired. Hypothetically speaking here, Burger King took a swipe at Chick-fil-A in their latest campaign to promote an obviously inferior tasting chicken sandwich. Editorial there by me, and I'm sure Trey would co-sign on with that one. But they're promising to donate to the nation's largest LGBT activist organization with every sale of their new chicken sandwich that's purchased. So Burger King added that the campaign runs through Pride Month conveniently and, quote, even on Sundays, and not so subtle dig at Chick-fil-A's long-standing policy of staying closed on the Sabbath day, obviously a Christian value there. So Burger King added a tweet saying that 40 cents of every chick-king, which is what they're calling their chicken sandwich, I guess, sold will go to the HRC and cap with a maximum donation of $250,000. This is a community we love dearly and have proudly supported over the years, so we couldn't miss an opportunity to take action and shine a light on the important conversation happening, is the comment from a Burger King spokesperson to USA Today. And efforts to boycott Chick-fil-A have once again recently heated up. We had the Daily Beast targeting Chick-fil-A CEO Dan Cathy yet again, pointing out that they donated to the National Christian Charitable Foundation, which reportedly is trying to derail the pro-LGBTQ Equality Act. So being against the Equality Act, I guess, means you have to get boycotted. So what's the left saying? Well, and the right reaction was unsurprisingly mixed along party lines, and a lot of people supporting, on the left saying, they already don't like Chick-fil-A for the values that they represent, Christian values. And what's the right saying? Well, you have people saying things like, I can't remember the last time I ate your salty, fatty food, but this guarantees I never will again. So that's just sort of a sampling of the types of comments you'd see there underneath this post from Burger King. So why does it matter? Well, Trey, I mean, companies are free to do what they want to do, but I think it's pretty clear that it's not good business to sit here and divide customers. It's like this. We've talked about this before on the podcast. These Twitter hot takes have spilled into real life. And I think the last thing we want right now is Twitter in real life to be a reality. Unless corporations have decided that, now, and I'm afraid that maybe they've decided this, that having a, divided, but one side being super loyal, because now you've picked a hot button issue and you've dug your heels in on that. You'd rather have like a fired up loyal base rather than just try to appeal to everyone. It's like, are people deciding they can't appeal to everyone now? And so, we may as well just pick half the country and go for it. And, I think now with all the virtue signaling going on, I think now we know what side will get picked if that's the case for most companies.
I think the most frustrating thing about this issue, like the Chick-fil-A issue that comes up literally every single Pride month, every single June of every single year.
Yeah, here comes the
this
call
issue
to
comes up.
Chick-fil-A, yeah.
And the frustrating thing about that, aside from it just being an obvious, just an obvious dunk on conservatives or a dunk on Christians, is the fact that nobody actually cares. Like I know several people who have different lifestyles, who have different political views, who have different religious, beliefs, whatever. All of us like Chick-fil-A. Yeah. I don't think people actually care. I think it's 5 people, whatever, who are really loud on social media, and then competitors to Chick-fil-A, for obvious reasons, go after Chick-fil-A, because it's a competitor. So any opportunity to take a quick shot that's going to be a zinger, that's going to get a lot of retweets, why not? The incentive is there because they're a competitor. But I don't know of anybody except for the handful of people on social media who actually care at all about the religious beliefs and convictions of the owners of Chick-fil-A.
Right.
Because their personal beliefs and their personal convictions have never weighed in on how the company operates, how it works. I have friends who are gay and have worked at Chick-fil-A and have never had an issue. So anyway, all of that to say, the vast majority of people, regardless of their lifestyle or their beliefs on human sexuality, they don't care.
No,
they do not care.
No, and I think to the opposite is that when people try to then attack them, then you do get. Most people just go there because they make a really delicious chicken sandwich. It's phenomenal. Yeah. Who doesn't like it? So you go there and you eat it. And most people just don't even think about it. They're like, oh, it's a good chicken sandwich. I'm going to go there. They're also really nice and they deliver the food quickly and do it accurately. So great. I'm going to go there. And then when you have people trying to attack them because somebody finds out that the CEO believes X, Y, Z, well, then you have people go, you know what? I'm going to go there intentionally because I want to support them because they're being attacked. So it actually has like the reverse effect than they actually want. So we'll see if this helps Burger King or not. My thought is that they just want people to pay attention to their, as I said, obviously inferior chicken sandwich. I haven't even had it. Probably won't, but I'm just going to say that I'm going to go out on a limb and say Chick-fil-A's sandwich is still going to be better than that. So no need to go. But I think they just want to get it. It's all marketing. It's all marketing publicity. And they think that this is the way to virtue signal during Pride Month, as we've seen so many companies do.
I have heard from my brother's girlfriend, who she's also a big fan of Chick-fil-A, so a reliable source.
Oh yeah. Okay.
She did tell me that McDonald's new chicken sandwich, in a pinch, if you really are craving one on a Sunday and you can't get Chick-fil-A's, she said McDonald's is pretty good. It's not as good as Chick-fil-A's, but she said it's not bad.
It's not. I have had the spicy chicken sandwich over there at McDonald's. It was surprisingly pretty good for, I like McDonald's, but I have to say I didn't think it would compare, but it was pretty good. It was a solid effort by McDonald's. So, all right.
Yeah. So there's that. For anybody who's really craving that on a Sunday, we can't go to Chick-fil-A, obviously, but you can go to McDonald's for the second best, I guess.
Right.
So, all right, story number 2. So a judge in Canada ruled Monday that the religious freedoms of Alberta pastor James Coates, who, remember, was arrested and placed in jail for more than a month for holding in-person worship services at his church. The judge said that his religious freedoms were not violated. So Coates, who leads Grace Life Church in Edmonton, recently submitted a charter challenge claiming that pandemic-related health orders in Alberta violated his religious liberties. Provincial court judge Robert Shigek, however, disagreed. He dismissed the pastor's application on Monday. Shigek acknowledged that the sincerity of the pastor's convictions was there, but he said that his religious freedoms weren't reasonably threatened in more than what he described as an insubstantial way. Again, Coates spent literally 35 days behind bars. I just feel like we need to let that one sink in. Verse 35 days behind bars, but his rights were not violated in anything more than an insubstantial way. So the judge said that the jail time didn't infringe on his religious freedom because he could have been released had he just acquiesced to a single condition, which is that he agreed to stop leading church services and restricted his congregation to only 15% of his facility's total capacity, a stipulation Coates argued at the time violated his conscience as a pastor. Shigek, though, said Coates chose to stay in jail. All he had to do was comply with the rules.
That's that's another one. You got to let that sink in again for a second. I mean, that logic is unbelievable. I mean, it's literally unbelievable logic. It's like, if you just kiss the ring, if you just denounce everything you believe in, there'd be no problem here at all. It's like they don't even see it. They don't even see it. I don't know how, but they don't.
No, not at all. Certainly is worth like repeating it. Maybe when the podcast is over and people are listening to it on iTunes, whatever, just rewind it and let that little that bit sink in.
Indeed.
So the judge also pushed back against the claim from Coates and his attorneys that Grace Life and the pastor were singled out. He said that the restrictions applied to everyone. And then I love this. The judge said that the ticketing process with Grace Life was, quote, quick and respectful. So for those who don't remember, in early April, just after Coates was released from jail, police came to Grace Life Church, locked the facility, and barricaded it, forcing the congregation to begin meeting at an undisclosed location for worship services. But the judge said the ticketing process was quick and respectful. So what's the left saying? Well, generally the left has been more accepting of these harsher restrictions. The majority of the draconian measures, for example, in the United States, have come from states led by Democrats. A lot of restrictions have been on places on churches in places like California and New York. Thankfully, we haven't seen anything like this, and the courts have ultimately sided more with Christians, with churches so far. So that's the difference between Canada and the U.S. is the religious freedoms are a bit more free here in the United States, it seems. So what's the right side? Well, conservatives have, like Coates, argued that lawmakers have used the pandemic to overstep their authority and implement long-lasting mandates that violate our protected constitutional, or in Canada's case, charter rights. So many on the right have argued this should have been more about personal responsibility and not forced compliance, particularly after the first several weeks and maybe even a couple months after the pandemic, when we knew a whole lot more about what was going on. So why does it matter? Well, I think the judge, Dan and I talked to you about this the other day, the judge is interpreting these orders, one, as if they're law, and they're not. They're orders that were intended and are intended to sunset and go away when the threat has gone away. And it seems that the threat should be alleviated since COVID cases have been plummeting all across Canada. But the second thing is that he's acting as if these orders are akin to some sort of moral law. It seems like he's equating them. Like if you didn't steal or murder, you wouldn't have to be punished. Right. So it's like if you didn't preach, you wouldn't have to be punished. So the argument that Coates' religious freedoms weren't and haven't been violated because all he had to do was promise the government he'd stop preaching, that just is absurd, like a crazy argument.
It's an utterly crazy argument. And again, this is why the Constitution matters. And this is why it's scary when, because obviously that's happening in Canada, but it's scary to me when you see people dismiss, as we did at the beginning of COVID, dismiss concerns about religious freedom. It's like they don't get that it's not just about Christians or Jews that are trying to, preach, and then, the secular society complain, well, why aren't they just following the laws? It's about your right to freely engage in the activities and the things that you want to. And, that trickles down. If you lose that right, everyone loses that right, whether you're Christian or not. So if you value living in a free country, you're going to be a little more stingy when it comes to what you allow the government to get away with. And in COVID, that was not the case. We were all too quick to try to just be good citizens and hand things over. And then look at how long it stayed. It reminds me of the scene from Star Wars when they kind of realized, like, hey, why has Palpatine been in office so long? How has he managed to stay in there for so long? And it's like, next thing you know, it's like, we just need a little emergency powers. And then next thing you know, you got a dictator in there. Now, I'm not saying that we're at that level yet, but I'm just saying that perhaps we should be a little more sensitive about our freedoms that we have, whether or not you are a Christian or not. You should understand that freedom is a good thing. And if we're just careless with it, that's how it's going to go away.
And a lot of these orders have been so obscure, right? Which is why they've been able to last so long. It's like, well, it's about safety and it's about, social distancing. So all of the language has been really kind of vague and nebulous, I guess. Yeah. So the fear, I guess, for some people is, when will it end? Like, is it going to then become like, well, climate change is a crisis and we need to put in these kind of orders. They'll look different, sure, but we need to put in these kind of orders because it's about keeping us all safe. So it becomes what kind of balance do you want to live in? Because you're going to have to assume some risk. Like, would you rather be free and taking risks, or entirely safe and you're restricted and can't do a whole lot of anything? At least not with as it goes with churches in Canada right now, it seems. So
indeed. All right, let us head into story number 3. Here we go. And Pastor Rick Warren, Saddleback Church which is affiliated with the Southern Baptist Convention, the SBC, stepping down from his position as lead pastor of the Megachurch. As he said, for 42 years, Kay, his wife, and I have known this day would eventually arrive, and we've been waiting for God's perfect timing. Warren said in a video to the church. He said, that's always been my goal, to serve God's purpose in my generation. God has given me the privilege to serve multiple generations. Warren is, of course, widely recognized as one of the nation's leading pastors. Many of you are familiar with him. He's guided countless young leaders. He's inspired a lot of pastors today, helping them with their churches and whatnot. And of course, kind of most notable for the purpose-driven church. Every church is big in God's eyes, and also, the purpose-driven life. And he had created a whole kind of ministry out of this purpose-driven network, which is a global alliance of pastors. It's got 160 countries, it's a big network. So a lot of good work being done there. He's founded a number of things, including pastors.com, which is kind of like this online community that helps with sermons and forums and other things for pastors to kind of bolster what they're doing in their churches. So a lot of things that he's done beyond the book that people may not be that familiar with. And so he's heading off into, I guess you would describe it as retirement now, but I'm sure someone like him is going to find some things to do, just a different role. And so really not a left or right issue here at all, Trey, but this one is just for, I guess us to just sort of pray for the pastor here as he goes on to sort of his next move.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a big shift. I mean, for not just for Christians, but for people who have have sought after, self-help books or learning just to better themselves, whatever your view is on that. Rick Warren has been kind of a staple in American society for many, many years. Obviously, he's not going away, like you said. He'll certainly still have a big presence, but it's definitely a big shift for him to be stepping down from Saddleback, because it's such a huge and influential church that's done so much good in California and around the world. So it's definitely a big deal, but it's certainly exciting too to see what could come next, and something to be praying for. Saddleback too was in the news not that long ago because they just ordained 2 or 3 women to be in ministry leadership. So Saddleback has been in the news, and they're kind of changing. So it'll be interesting to see how this impacts changes at the church, if they continue to shift their theology on certain issues or not. I don't know.
Yeah, and they're in the middle of that search right now, and so we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. I'm sure we'll report on it whenever they pick somebody new.
Yeah, for sure. All right, story number 4. So this one's also on the West Coast, but it's a little bit less. It's a little bit less ministry based. So, Washington State is allowing adults to receive free marijuana if they take the COVID vaccine as part of an initiative to incentivize more people to get the shot. So the campaign, which is
they just want everybody healthy, Trey. I'm sorry to interrupt, but they just want everybody healthy, right?
I'll talk a little bit about this later. I can't see how this is a good idea in any way, but the campaign, which has been named Joints for Jabs, which not my favorite name I've ever heard. So it was announced yesterday by the state's Liquor and Cannabis Board. It went into effect immediately and runs through July 12th. I have to pause again. Washington State is kind of like another world, I guess, to me over here in Virginia. We do not have a cannabis board in Virginia. I didn't know this was a government thing.
No, I mean, this went from decriminalizing to let's put this in like the health category. That ramped up pretty quick, huh? Man, they got some good lobbyists over there in the. They must be bringing in some good tax revenue over there in the marijuana industry on the West Coast. I don't know. It doesn't make much sense.
No. So the state made the decision to launch the initiative after reportedly receiving multiple requests from marijuana retailers asking to engage in a promotion to encourage COVID vaccinations. So in Washington, marijuana is legal for recreational use for adults 21 years and older. The state also partnered with businesses in May to offer free alcohol to customers who showed proof of vaccination, which also not my favorite idea. So what's the left saying? Well, Biden has been touting all kinds of partnerships to get people to take COVID vaccines. If people get the shots, he said earlier this month, we can experience, quote, a summer of freedom and a summer of joy. So he advertised a promotion by Anheuser-Busch, which announced it will buy Americans 21 and older a round of beer once Biden's goal of vaccinating 70% of Americans is met. This is an interesting shift for Democrats, though, and health officials, all of whom originally were telling people to get vaccinated and still insisting everything was going to stay exactly the same. Masks would still be required, distancing would remain mandatory. So this is kind of a new shift. I wasn't expecting beer and marijuana to be part of it, but it is 2021.
Yeah.
So what's the right saying? Well, conservatives have really argued that it should be left up to individuals, Dan, about whether they want to get vaccinated or not. So why does it matter? Well, I'm fine with whatever initiatives that private businesses want to do. That's their prerogative. It's up to them. But I will say I'm not a big fan of the government partnering to give away free alcohol and marijuana for vaccinations. I know this sounds puritanical probably, but as a Christian too, I look at the data showing that the United States already has a drug, marijuana, beer, alcohol problem, across the country. We don't really need the government saying like, oh, get the shot and then take these unhealthy substances because that'll make it better. So I just think there are a lot of other healthier options out there other than beer and marijuana, but that's just my opinion.
I get the sense, Trey, and maybe I'm wrong on this. History and time will tell. I get the sense that we are currently living in a time, save stories that you see like this. I really feel like there's going to be a documentary, much in the way that we would see, old newsreels from back in the day, and you watch them and you're like, I can't believe people were doing that. And, whatever the case may be. I think I saw one it was a newsreel with interviews on a town nearby where I live that was desegregating this, back in the 60s. And you see the interviews from people and you're just like, I can't believe this was the same planet, the way they were talking and the racism and everything else. I really think we're going to look back on things like this. Hey, Uncle Sam wants you to get the vaccine. We'll give you free opioid shots and heroin needles if you do it. Hey, like what is going on here? I know that it's marijuana, but like clearly not. It's a drug. It's a narcotic. Like what are you talking about? That is just pure insanity. I mean, regardless, even if you want to say it should be legal or not, it's certainly not healthy for you. And the government's like supposedly all about our health. Hey, socially distance, wear your mask, do all these things, be healthy, smoke some pot. What? I mean, I don't know. But I think I'm waiting for the documentary, the 30 for 30 in 30 years from now, when everyone laughs at all the things that we did in the last year.
And there's the Ad Council, which is a government agency that puts out all of these ads about drugs and don't smoke pot, don't vape, whatever, all of these ads. But if you're going to get the vaccine, then maybe vaping's cool. In fact, we'll just give you the vape pen ourselves.
We'll pay for it.
It just seems like, what is the government doing with this? I don't see how it's. I hope you're right about the future, Dan. That we'll look back and say, and generations after us will look at us and say they were crazy. Like this was not a good idea.
That's true. I didn't even think of that. I'm just assuming we'll move back towards sanity at some point. If we don't have those documentaries, I mean, we could be. Yeah. It could be. Not, all right. I don't want to be a pessimist on the future. Let's just trust God's plan and His sovereignty, and that everything is going according to His purpose as planned, including allowing our wackiness with things from the federal government here. And state government. So, all right.
That's a good way to leave it there.
Yeah, I know. I could have done better. All right. Head on over to cbnnews.com and faithwire.com for more news from a Christian perspective. Probably some more positive stories as well. God bless. We'll see you back here tomorrow. I mean, I can't. I just can't. I mean, what in the world? Oh. The news never ceases to amaze me. I've been doing this for 20-something years now, and when I think I've seen it all, I just read through the news for another day, and it's amazing. It's amazing.
An interesting update. We're working on a story right now. It'll be on faithwire.com shortly, and probably on CBN News as well. But there's the premier of Alberta, where pastors have been arrested. We've talked about Artur Pawlowski has been one that we've written about. James Coates, like we talked about there. So he's overseen a lot of these pastors' arrests. Just earlier this week, just yesterday, the premier of Alberta, he admitted that he participated in a dinner where he violated 24 of his own COVID restrictions. But he's still overseeing pastors being arrested because they're being unsafe. So it's just
they sent people
crazy.
They sent people to Pastor Pawlowski's church based on tips. Like, they didn't even have any information. I think that's ultimately why they didn't go in the first couple times, because they didn't really have any proof of anything. They were just getting ratted out on their tattletale hotlines that they've got set up. And then Pastor Coates' church, of course, but then rules for thee, not for me. They can go ahead and break these things all we want. We saw that happen here multiple times. That governor of, I think Michigan traveled, Governor Newsom traveled after they said, well, I just went to see my family and it was safe. It's almost like you use discernment and judgment like all free Americans should be able to do. But they don't, they don't think that way. They'd rather just,
there was another pastor in Alberta who was just arrested a few weeks ago toward the end of May. And the Albertan police officers, in their statement about it, they said, well, because he failed to comply with COVID restrictions, so we arrested him. And I just thought, well, the premier of Alberta, by that same definition, deserves to be arrested because he went to a dinner on June 1st with other ministers in the province. And he simply failed to comply with COVID restrictions. So I guess by that same standard, you need to go into his church like we've seen so many of these videos and, arrest him. So, but it's just, it's upsetting.
Well,
I know.
Yeah. There's
but
so many.
Like you said, at the end of the podcast, God's sovereign, and it's going to work out the way it needs to work out. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't call out these hypocrisies when we see them in the meantime.
And the other thing, and I didn't want to say this to be a double Debbie Downer, but again, we have to. The reason why God's sovereignty is important is because you can have joy and peace no matter what the situation is. Doesn't mean that the situation is going to end up the way we want it, right? So when I say that, like, when I say God's sovereign and everything's going to be great, well, sometimes kingdoms crumble, and sometimes there's periods of famine. Sometimes there's a lot of not good stuff that needs to be accomplished, and just look at all the early apostles and Christians, and many of the big ones got martyred. That's you'd think, okay, these first Christians that were out there spreading the gospel, right? If our modern view is, oh, well, if we're doing all the right things, God's on our side and he's just gonna, well, they got marched right to their death. You know what I mean? But I think that was just more evidence of, making his name great because these people were willing to die for their beliefs. So point being there is that, the way God's going to glorify himself doesn't always mean we're going to get sunshine and lollipops here in our walk. And sometimes it's necessary for some, for pulling the Band-Aid off, and experiencing a little bit of tough times, but having faith in the middle of those times is where God's going to be glorified. So,
well, and I think that's the whole. We're already redeemed because of Jesus's work on the cross, but ultimate redemption is not going to come, until it'll come in eternity in heaven. But we, like you said, we still have to deal with the fact that we live in a broken and fallen world. So all kinds of evils still exist that we just have to endure. I mean, but we know that these things don't happen outside of God's knowledge. Right. And they don't happen outside of God's care, so that we know ultimately in eternity God will get glory and it'll be for our good.
Yeah.
But we just have to try to remain faithful in the meantime, as difficult as that is, which is why I think God gave us the body of Christ, right? A community of believers so that we can help bear each other's burdens, because we're not meant to carry these difficult things by ourselves.
Yeah. And I'll just, my last thought on this is I think of Job and Joseph, and, when you look at the trials that they went through and in particular, with Job, it's, God, it's, the adversary going to God and God saying, have you considered my servant Job? So literally says, here, go try Job, and then grants permission to allow that to happen so that ultimately his purpose would be accomplished. And then with Joseph, he says that what you meant for evil, I meant for good. So again, I'm sure it wasn't fun for Joseph getting, thrown to the wolves by his brothers. That had to be horrible for him. Like, what?
Right.
But ended up, over time, and you read it and you just think you think of Pastor Coates there in prison for 30 days. And, I'm forgetting off the top of my head how long Joseph was in prison, but I think it wasn't a couple of years. Could be wrong on that, but I think it was a couple of years. But anyway, so point is, the good thing is that in the midst of whatever trials we face, whatever craziness is going on in the world, and as we're kind of joking about with our news stories, that there's a lot of it, God's sovereign in all of it, and like you said, we do what we can. We're called to behave a certain way, act a certain way, do certain things, spread the gospel, and ultimately make God's name known and make it great. And so that's all we can do. So
for sure,
hopefully that leaves you with some peace. Maybe not, I don't know, but that's my story and I'm sticking to it, Trey.
I like that we left this picture of a joint in the middle of us.
Sorry. Yeah, I didn't. That's my bad.
I just happened to notice that. I was like, oh, it's still there.
I know. Kind of late to take it off now, but here, I can take it down now. There, now I got it off.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. Adios.